Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION@CuandReview.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Herald Scotland on Wednesday the 24th of April 2024. From the news section. Very high risk. SFRS issue wildfire warning for Scotland. This article was written by Josh Carmichael and read by me, Corey. Parts of Scotland are at a very high risk of wildfire over the next 2 days, with fire services issuing a warning to the public. Scottish Fire and Rescue is urging the public not to light fires outdoors on Wednesday and Thursday this week as the nation's sunny spell continues. Wednesday has a very high risk of wildfire in Shetland and parts of the west coast and islands, while warnings increase throughout Thursday with an extreme risk in the Outer Hebrides Islands. SFRS Group Commander is one of the service's wildfire tactical advisors. Speaking about the risks, he said even with the best of intentions, there is still a risk that fire can spread, and highlighted the devastating consequences that can be had if someone lights a fire and doesn't fully extinguish it before leaving. He said, people living in the south and west of Scotland should be extra cautious over the next few days, and think twice before using anything involving a naked flame outdoors. The key issues over the next few days are sunshine, warm air temperatures, low humidity, and moderate to strong winds. During this period of high risk, fires could ignite easily, spread fast, and burn with high intensity. Firefighters tackled an average of 1 wildfire every day across Scotland during spring and early summer of last year. There were 133 incidents between March and June of 2023, typically the busiest time of the year for wildfires in Scotland. Human behaviour can significantly lower the chance of a wildfire starting, so it's crucial that people act safely and responsibly in rural environments, and always follow the Scottish Outdoor Access Code. SFRS issues wildfire warnings in conjunction with the Scottish Wildfire Forum. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Josh Carmichael, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland on Wednesday the 24th of April 2024. From the news section. Death of cyclist in Kilmarnock's McDonald Drive probed. This article was written by Jodie Harrison and is being read by me, Corey. Police are appealing for information as they investigate the death of a man who came off his bike. The 74-year-old was found injured beside his bicycle in McDonald Drive at the junction with Milton Drive in Kilmarnock at around 10:30 a.m. on Friday, April 19th. He was taken to Cross House Hospital in the Ayrshire town, where he died later that day. The incident was reported to police on Monday, April 22nd, and they launched an investigation as they tried to piece together what happened. Sergeant Brian Simpson of the Road Policing Unit at Irvine said officers are carrying out inquiries to establish how the man came about his injuries. He said, We are working to gather information that will assist us in establishing the circumstances, and I would urge anyone who was in the area of Milton Drive on Friday morning to please contact us as soon as possible. I would also appeal to anyone with dashcam to check their footage for anything that may assist our ongoing inquiries. Anyone with information is asked to contact police on 101, quoting reference number 1804 of April 22nd. Again, if you have any information, please contact police on 101, quoting reference number 1804 of April 22nd. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Jodie Harrison, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 24th of April 2024. From the news section. Scotch Whisky Association targets Korean fake whisky peddler. This article was written by Brian Donnelly and read by me, Corey. A Scottish whisky trade body that acts as a watchdog against fake products has closed down a counterfeit Scotch operation in South Korea in a groundbreaking case. In the first of such case to use Scotch whisky South Korean certification trademark, which was granted in 2019, the Scotch Whisky Association said it had successfully stopped the sale of fake Scotch whisky, which misleads consumers and damages legitimate trade. The case centred on a brand called Diane, the Legend Scotch whisky, which the SWA said was labelled as having been produced in Jordan rather than Scotland, and with a strength of only 35% alcohol by volume, ABV, rather than the legal minimum of 40%. The SWA's legal team filed a criminal complaint against the seller, and following a letter of support from the British Embassy in Seoul, a raid was carried out on the seller's premises, resulting in a significant number of fake Scotch whisky bottles bearing the brand being seized. The seller was charged and the case presented before Busan District Court. The SWA said the court agreed the seller had infringed the Scottish Whisky Certification trademark and imposed an 8-month jail sentence on the company's sole director, suspended for 2 years, and a fine of approximately £160,000. An appeal by the seller failed. With more than 14.3 million bottles exported to South Korea in 2023 and the broader Asia-Pacific market, the recipient of nearly a third of all Scottish whisky exports in 2023. Protecting consumer confidence in Scotch whisky is vital for continued growth. Caitlin O'Donnell, Senior Legal Counsel at the SWA, said, "While South Korea is generally free of fake Scotch whisky, we work closely with our local agents and our member companies to investigate any suspicious products. We're pleased that we were able to halt further production of this brand and remove it from shelves, ensuring that it can no longer take advantage of the reputation of Scotland's national drink. Effective intellectual property protection through legal frameworks such as certification trademarks and geographical indication status allows us to protect Scotch whisky all around the world. The national asset is under attack from fake and illicit markets around the world, including Russia and China. The Herald also reported that Russia had a record year for imports despite companies' self-imposed ban on exporting to the country, following its invasion of Ukraine. Customs figures from the Kremlin show whisky imports of more than $350 million in 2023, the highest to date. Russia also increased its production of fake Scotch, amid an international sanctions squeeze. The SWA made a record number of official objections about new Russian trademarks. Recent figures showed that the Scotch whisky industry contributed £7.1 billion to the UK economy in 2022. The SWA report also showed that the industry supports 66,000 jobs across the UK, of which 41,000 are in Scotland. The SWA said the basic definition of Scotch whisky is that it is made in Scotland from only cereals, water and yeast, matured for a minimum of 3 years in oak casks, bottled at a minimum strength of 40 ABV, distilled below 94.8% ABV so that it retains the flavour and aroma derived from its raw materials, and no flavouring or sweetening is permitted. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Brian Donnelly, and it was read by me, Corey.
This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 25th of April 2024, from the news section. Anger as Calmac ferry set to be sidelined for 8 months over rust. This exclusive article is written by Martin Williams. One of Scotland's oldest ferries has been sidelined until at least late August after the Scottish Government-owned ferry operator Calmac, which has been landed with a £5 million repair bill over rust. It means that one MV Caledonian Isles, one of the elder statesmen of the ageing ferry fleet, will have been out of action for at least 8 months. The ferry operator had warned in February of disruption across the Clyde and Hebrides network as a result of steelwork issues with the 31-year-old ferry, which serves on the Arran route, one of the busiest on the Scottish coast, and is due to be replaced. It has been out of action since going for an overhaul at the start of January, and it had been hoped in the last update that it would be back by July to help with the busy summer period. But the Herald understands that user groups who have been pushing for contingency plans have now discovered that the vessel will not return till sometime in late August at the earliest. They have been told that the repair plan shows there was still a significant amount of work to be done. It is understood that no contingency plans have yet been agreed to deal with the further disruption. It was sidelined for over 3 months with further steelwork and engine difficulties this time last year, with repair work then estimated at £1 million. It had been due to leave the yard after an overhaul before issues with engines, steelwork and bearings were noted by the engineers. Further steelwork problems were attributed to a further period spent in the yard in early 2022. The vessel was found to have had major technical problems during overhaul again this year, and was not expected back till at least the end of March originally. Users had been told that the vessel needs extensive steelwork, leading to concerns that it is suffering rust issues. A ferry user group official said that the latest development was yet another in a long line of disasters to hit the West Coast ferry fleet. If this is correct, then this unholy mess for the service has just got a whole lot messier, and Calmac and the Scottish Government need to come up with some kind of solution to this continual resilience issue in the short term, he said. It is one of now 3 ferries that have now been sidelined. It emerged that the 29-year-old MV Isle of Lewis was put out of action after issues surfaced on Sunday. It is berthed in Greenock for further repairs to a bow visor. The development has caused disruption to services to and from the beleaguered island of South Uist. One of the oldest vessels in Calmac's ageing fleet, the 37-year-old MV Isle of Mull, has been drafted in to operate an emergency combined 2-island timetable till Friday to and from Barra and Loch Boisdale, the main port on South Uist. It had also been shifted from the Mull service to operate to and from South Uist until May the 10th due to network issues. Scottish Government-owned CalMac has told users that preparation of a full and permanent repair plan is underway, and once completed they will be able to define an estimated repair duration. MV Isle of Lewis joined MV Loch Shira and MV Caledonian Isles on the sidelines as delays to the ferry's operator's annual overhaul programme has resulted in disruption across the Clyde and the Hebrides network. CalMac had been carrying out trials using MV Isle of Mull to and from Uig, part of the Skye Triangle route, serving Uist and Harris. But they discovered that the vessels would not be able to deliver a regular timetabled service there. CalMac was forced to remove MV Loch Shira from one of its busiest routes on April the 5th, due to it being damaged by heavy vehicles, and was expected to be sidelined for months. The vessel, which usually operates on the Largs to Cambrai route, entered dry docks for repairs and is not expected back until mid-June at the earliest. The MV Loch Ridden had been operating a single vessel service, leaving customers facing an increase in waiting times. CalMac had redeployed the oldest ferry in its fleet, MV Isle of Cambrai, as a supporting second vessel on the route until another vessel was able to take over. The ferry operator has warned users that until further notice, due to smaller vessels operating on the route, vehicle capacity has been slashed and queues are to be expected. It comes as CalMac's spend on unplanned maintenance of the ageing ferry fleet has more than trebled in 5.5 years. Details from the state-owned ferry operator shows that over the period some £16 million has had to be spent on the unexpected repairs. While an average of £147,377 a month was being spent on the CalMac fleet nearly 6 years ago, the bill has risen to £481,310 now. Concerns have been raised that some £3,850,483 was spent on an unplanned ferry maintenance in the first 8 months of 2023 to 24, already the highest since CalMac began tracking the spend. It represents a rise of more than £800,000 on the bill for the whole of 2022 to 23. Meanwhile, new ferries Glen Sannox and sister ship Glen Rosa, which were due online in the first half of 2018, with both now due to serve Arran, are at least 6 years late, with costs expected to quadruple the original £97 million contract. CalMac's interim chief executive Duncan Mackison said, "In the last week we have been advised that the scope of repairs will take significantly longer than anticipated. We know this news is disappointing, particularly for people on Arran, which is normally served by the vessel. We issued a revised summer timetable when we knew MV Caledonian Isles would be unavailable for a significant period of time. That timetable will remain in place until she is ready to return, though we will continue to explore what we can do to support the service on that route." The scope of work provided in February was indicative and subject to change, based on a full analysis of the vessel's repair needs. The nature of the vessel structure is such that this analysis has been ongoing alongside repairs. This is a highly complex repair effort where we have to be mindful of the vessel's age and condition. As part of the works, the auxiliary engines and their bed plates were removed from the vessel to allow access to the double-bottom water ballast tank tops. The structure below the main engines is being supported using hydraulic jacks, while the steel around those engines is renewed. The main engines will need to be lifted off their bed plates to allow access under the engines for renewal of the tank top steel directly below the sump. With our partners, we exhausted every possible avenue to avoid removing the engines, but this is the only way to complete the works to the standard required. Our aim is to get the vessel back into service as quickly as possible, and it is in that spirit that we are in regular contact with the dry dock operator, which is working around the clock to complete these repairs at speed. We will continue to liaise with the Arran Ferry Committee and other local stakeholders on the vessel's progress. That article was written by Martin Williams. This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 25th of April 2024, from the news section. Angus Robertson accused of being evasive on Tartan Week costs. This article is written by Katrine Bussey. Scotland's External Affairs Secretary has been accused of being evasive and failing to treat MSPs with respect, as he was pressed over the cost of his overseas trips. Angus Robertson, who has recently returned from New York for Tartan Week, said the costs of the visit are still being finalised. But when pressed to reveal the total cost of his trip since taking on the post in 2021, he failed to give an answer. Conservative MSP Edward Mountain had asked him to provide the costs, saying a figure would be useful. Mr. Robertson said details of all ministerial trips are routinely published by the Scottish Government. He added that final cost details from the recent attendance at Tartan Week in the United States are still in the process of being finalised, pledging to update the Conservative MSP with the information as soon as it is available. But Mr. Mountain accused Mr. Robertson of being evasive. "I'm not sure if that is even an attempted answer to my question," the Tory said. "These trips are funded by the taxpayer, and they deserve to hear the answer, right here in their own Parliament, exactly what these costs have been. We're not being treated with respect if we're not being given answers." Mr. Robertson responded by saying the Tory could huff and puff as much as he likes, adding, "It is simply a statement of fact, having only returned in recent weeks from Tartan Week, that the latest travel information has not been fully compiled." He insisted that this is an entirely reasonable answer to the question, saying he is sure Mr. Mountain wouldn't wish me to pluck numbers from the sky and answer him without having the facts. That article was written by Katrine Bussey. This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 25th of April 2024, from the news section. Councils across Scotland facing strikes over pay offer. This article is written by Gabriel Mackay. Councils across Scotland could be hit by strikes if an imminent pay offer is deemed too low. GMB Scotland balloted members across all local authorities to ask whether a formal vote on walkouts should be taken if the forthcoming offer from council leaders is deemed too low. Following the 2-week consultation, 97% of voting members want a formal vote on strike action if any offer is not credible. It's speculated the offer from local authorities will be less than 3%. Keir Greenaway, GMB Scotland's senior organiser in public services, said the pay offer is already too late and seems certain to be too low when councillors and MSPs are receiving a pay rise of more than 6%. He called for urgent discussion between councils, unions and government ministers on how a fair pay offer can be funded. Greenaway said, "Our members will rightly be asking why our politicians believe they deserve a rise of more than 6%, while council workers delivering vital frontline services do not. The hypocrisy would be staggering if it was not so entirely predictable. We hoped council leaders might have learned lessons from last year and act with greater urgency. That has not happened, and the same mistakes are being made, with the same lack of action, leading to the same rising support for industrial action. Our members have now made clear these unnecessary delays will no longer be tolerated. We have no time to waste, and if the offer, whenever it comes, is not credible, we will move swiftly to a formal ballot on industrial action. Councillors and ministers cannot say they have not been warned. Our members no longer have the patience to listen to council leaders pleading poverty while refusing to ask ministers for the money needed to pay staff fairly. They also have no time to listen to Scottish Government ministers claiming it has nothing to do with them after they announced a council tax freeze without warning or consultation. This has become an annual pantomime of buck passing and blame shifting between the councils and the government, and our members have seen it too many times before. Without joint talks right now, without funding for a fair negotiated pay award, industrial action in our local authorities will be inevitable. That article was written by Gabriel Mackay. This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 25th of April 2024, from the news section. Former DUP leader Geoffrey Donaldson in court on rape charge. This article is written by Jonathan McCambridge, David Young, Kate McCurry and Cillian Sherlock. Former DUP leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has appeared in court charged with rape and a number of other historical sex offences. Donaldson's wife, Lady Eleanor Donaldson, also appeared in court to face charges in relation to the same police investigation. The pair were released on continuing bail when they first made their appearance at Newry Magistrates' Court on Wednesday. The 61-year-old politician was arrested and charged in relation to historical sexual allegations at the end of March. He did not speak as he arrived at the court, accompanied by his solicitor, John McBurney, on Wednesday. Police officers attempted to keep the roadway clear during a large media scrum for his arrival. The public gallery in the tiny Court 3 at Newry Courthouse was packed for the hearing. There were so many media in attendance that special arrangements were made to facilitate journalists who could not be accommodated in the courtroom. Donaldson, wearing a grey suit, and his wife, wearing a black suit, sat in the dock at the rear of the court, with a court custody officer between them. The hearing began with the District Judge Eamon King noting the public interest in the case and warning that it would be a criminal offence for anyone to record the proceedings. The two defendants were then asked to confirm their names and dates of birth. They stood as the charges were read to them. Geoffrey Donaldson faces 11 charges, 1 of rape, 1 of committing an act of gross indecency, and 9 of indecent assault on dates between 1985 and 2006. The offences relate to 2 alleged victims. Asked if he understood the charges, he nodded and said, "I do." His wife, 58, of Dublin Hill Road, Dromore, faces charges of aiding and abetting in connection with the alleged offences. She also confirmed to the judge that she understood the charges. Neither defendant was asked to formally enter a plea. A PSNI's detective sergeant told the court he could connect the pair to the charges. Defence lawyers said there had been some agreed variations to bail, including ending a condition that the two defendants cannot contact each other. A public prosecution service lawyer asked for a 4-week adjournment to progress work on setting a date for a preliminary inquiry. The judge listed the case for mention again on May the 22nd. However, he said the two defendants would not have to attend on that date. The pair were released on continuing bail of £350 following the brief hearing. There were chaotic scenes as they left Newry Courthouse. Some members of the public shouted abuse and tried to lunge towards him as he left the building. The police surrounded Geoffrey Donaldson, who briefly re-entered the court building before leaving a second time and departing in a car. He resigned as DUP leader and was suspended from the party after the allegations against him emerged. He had recently led the DUP back into Stormont following a 2-year boycott of the power-sharing institutions. East Belfast MP and Deputy Leader Gavin Robinson has been appointed interim party leader. Donaldson has so far remained as MP for Lagan Valley, a seat he has held since 1997. That article was written by Jonathan McCambridge, David Young, Kate McCurry and Cillian Sherlock. This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 25th of April 2024 from the news section. 3 men arrested after 5 die in Channel boat crossing. This article is written by Josh Carmichael. 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of immigration offences after 5 migrants, including a child, died while trying to cross the Channel. The National Crime Agency said investigators are questioning 2 men from Sudan, aged 19 and 22, and a third 22-year-old suspect from South Sudan over the tragedy. They were arrested on suspicion of facilitating illegal immigration and entering the UK illegally. The 55 surviving boat passengers have already been interviewed and are expected to be spoken to further in the coming days. Craig Turner, Deputy Director of Investigations for the National Crime Agency, said, "This tragic incident once again demonstrates the threat to life posed by these crossings and brings into focus why it is so important to target the criminal gangs involved in organising them. We will do all we can with partners in the UK and France to secure evidence, identify those responsible for this event and bring them to justice." More than 400 migrants arrived in the UK on the day the group died. The crossings took place as the tragedy off the coast of northern France unfolded, just hours after Parliament passed legislation aimed at getting the government's plan to give asylum seekers a one-way ticket to Rwanda off the ground. A dinghy carrying more than 100 people set off from Wimereux at around 6 a.m. on Tuesday, but got into difficulty. 3 men, a woman and a girl died, according to the French Coast Guard. Some 49 people were rescued, but 58 others refused to leave the boat and continued their journey towards the UK, the Coast Guard said in a statement, with several other boats later embarking on the crossing. Home Office figures show 402 people made the journey in 7 boats that same day, after an 8-day break in activity in the Channel, which suggests there was an average of around 57 people per boat. Young children and babies were among those seen being taken ashore in Dover, Kent, while witnesses saw crews carrying someone on a stretcher from a lifeboat to an ambulance. The latest crossings take the provisional total for the year so far to 6,667, 20% higher than this time last year, 5,546, but slightly lower, down 0.4%, than the figure recorded at this stage in 2022, 6,691. Some 29,437 people made the journey in 2023, down 36% on a record 45,774 arrivals in 2022. Campaigners said the Rwanda plan will not save lives, as they lamented the news of more deaths due to the treacherous journey and called for the Channel not to become a graveyard for children. But Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said the incident underscores the need for the deterrent the government hopes sending migrants to the East African nation if they arrive illegally in the UK will bring. the National Crime Agency said it will be supporting the French investigation into the deaths with UK police and border force. That article was written by Josh Carmichael.
Glasgow Herald, Friday the 26th of April, from the news section. Ash Regan writes to Yousaf with demands in exchange for a vote. The Alba Party MSP, whose vote could be crucial to Humza Yousaf's political future, has written to the First Minister with a list of demands to ensure her support. Ash Regan, a former SNP minister who defected to Alex Salmond's party, said she wanted to see progress on Scottish independence and defending the rights of women and children. Mr Yousaf is battling to save his position as First Minister after his former allies in the Scottish Greens vowed to vote against him in a motion of no confidence. The SNP leader dramatically brought the power-sharing deal with Greens to an end, but now faces a backlash which could cost him his job. A tight vote is expected at Holyrood next week, and since the SNP have 63 out of the 128 MSPs, Miss Regan's vote would appear to be crucial in getting Mr Yousaf over the line in a confidence vote. Speaking to the BBC's World Tonight, the Alba Party MSP said, "I have written to the First Minister today with a number of issues that I've raised with him on progress made towards independence, on how he will defend the rights of women and children, and a return to competent governance. My vote will depend on really what Humza comes back with in response to my letter." She continued, "I am not setting out specific demands as such. I'm putting the ball into Humza's court for him to come back to me and explain to me how he will make progress in a couple of these areas, particularly around the return to a competent government." The Alba Party said Miss Regan's letter would be sent out on Friday. Allies of Mr Yousaf insisted he was coming out fighting in the face of a concerted effort by opponents to oust him. On Thursday night, a source close to the First Minister said Mr Yousaf was absolutely not considering his position following the chaotic events of Thursday. His decision to end the Butte House agreement with the Scottish Greens was branded an act of political cowardice by the smaller pro-independence party. The Greens will back a no-confidence motion proposed by Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross, leaving Mr Yousaf facing a knife-edge vote at Holyrood next week. Lorna Slater, co-leader of the Scottish Greens, told the PA news agency, "We no longer have confidence in a progressive government in Scotland, doing the right thing for climate and nature." The Butte House agreement gave the SNP-led government a majority at Holyrood, but it came under strain in recent days after the Greens said they would put the future of the deal to a vote by their members. Some in the Greens were unhappy at the Scottish Government's recent dropping of 2030 climate targets and the decision to pause the prescription of new puberty blockers at Scotland's only gender clinic. With the Greens voting in favour of the no-confidence motion, there would be 64 out of 128 MSPs who do not back the First Minister. The SNP have 63 MSPs at Holyrood, while there is also Miss Regan of the Alba Party, who has not yet confirmed which way she will vote. Alba leader and former First Minister Alex Salmond said Miss Regan was now the most powerful MSP in Scottish Parliament, and told Times Radio she would write to Mr Yousaf setting out her demands on independence and women's rights. Presiding officer Alison Johnson can cast tie-breaking votes but would be expected to vote in favour of the status quo. Any vote is likely to take place next week, with timings to be confirmed by parliamentary authorities. The decision to end the Butte House agreement means Scottish Green co-leader Miss Slater and Patrick Harvey have lost their ministerial roles. Their MSP group met on Thursday afternoon to discuss their approach to the confidence vote. Miss Slater said, "Today, the First Minister decided to tear up that agreement to end the Butte House agreement, and so we no longer have confidence in a progressive government in Scotland doing the right thing for climate and nature. So the Scottish Green MSPs will not be supporting Humza Yousaf in a vote of no confidence." She confirmed that rather than abstaining, we will vote in favour of a vote of no confidence, and claimed the First Minister had caved to the Conservative right-wing branch of the SNP. A spokesman for Mr Yousaf refused to say if he would quit if he lost the confidence vote, describing the question as hypothetical. The SNP leader accused the Tories of game playing, insisting the power-sharing deal with the Greens had served its purpose and lasted 19 times longer than Liz Truss's premiership. That was an article by Jodie Harrison. Glasgow Herald, Friday the 26th of April, from the letters section. Does medical science change at the border? Last week's publication of the CAS review of gender identity services and the various parties' reactions to it caused severe ructions in Holyrood and played a significant part in the ending of the Bute House Agreement, with the Greens unhappy with the Scottish Government's response. Today, one of our readers condemns both parties over the issue. When does science matter? It's an interesting question, never more so, perhaps, than when considering Scotland's political response to the CAS review of medical treatments for transgender young people, especially that of the Scottish Greens. See, I thought that the Scottish Greens would, being so keen on science when it comes to climate change, have welcomed the informed observations of a world-leading paediatrician. After all, if climate evidence is good enough to decide Scotland's approach towards the well-being of our planet, then medical evidence should be good enough for our approach towards the well-being of Scotland's young people, right? It seems not. The response from the SNP Green administration has been, at best, a guarded froideur, or, at worst, in the case of some elected members of a Green persuasion, outright dismissiveness. The CAS report traduced on nakedly partisan political grounds. Then, during today's debate on the matter at Holyrood, it was said, and at no less than ministerial level, that Scotland should carefully consider the report because it was commissioned by NHS England and thus may not fit Scotland's needs. That struck me as quite strange. Medical science doesn't stop at borders, does it? We're all Jock Tamson's bairns, are we not? Or do they know different? The truth is, of course, that as with so many issues in Scotland now, a land that was once home of the Enlightenment and Empire, facts are trumped by ideology, in order to serve agendas instead of people. Where once we Scots championed intellectual analysis and sober observations, we now indulge performative political posturing from people drunk on their own worldview. Fanaticism was once defined as redoubling your effort when you have forgotten your aim. If the true and stated aim of those currently in power at Holyrood is to help our nation's young people, whether transgender or not, then they ought to heed those words very carefully indeed. That was a letter by Colin Montgomery of Edinburgh. Glasgow Herald, Friday the 26th of April, from the news section. Fire crews battle blaze in Glasgow's Polwarth Street area. Fire crews are battling a blaze which broke out in a flat in Glasgow early this morning. 4 fire engines and a high-reach vehicle were sent to the scene in Polwarth Street in the city's Hindland area. It is believed that at least one person has been injured and ambulance services are in attendance. Fire crews remain at the street, which is cordoned off. A Scottish Fire and Rescue Service spokesperson said, "We were alerted at 5:56 a.m. on Friday the 26th of April to reports of a fire affecting a tenement flat on Polwarth Street in the Hindland area of Glasgow. Operations Control mobilised 4 appliances and a high-reach vehicle to the scene, where crews remain in attendance." ScotRail said on social media that due to the nearby emergency, trains passing through Hindland Station could be subject to alteration and cancellation, and urged travellers to plan ahead. The rail operator said more information would be provided later when the situation becomes clearer. That was an article by Jodie Harrison.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 29th of April, from the business section. Brexit and UK benefits threat as Tories make real mess of it. Article written by Ian McConnell, Group Business Editor. In the last week or so, the Tory ideology which has been so damaging to the UK economy has been in the spotlight. Of course, that is not to say there has been some sort of epiphany among the ruling Conservatives or their erstwhile chief Brexit negotiator, Lord David Frost, in terms of them suddenly realising the damage they have caused and putting their hands up. Rather, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Lord Frost, a former chief executive of the Scotch Whisky Association, have been ploughing what for them are very familiar furrows. The reality looks ever more distant from what they are peddling, and that is saying something. For Mr Sunak, we have had a regurgitation of the Tories' toxic message on welfare with some fresh topspin. The topspin did not make the message any more palatable from a societal perspective, and the Tory reasoning on this front was as baffling as ever from an economic standpoint. As my column in the Herald on Wednesday observed, to say that the Conservative efforts to drive the economically inactive back to work are looking increasingly desperate would be a monumental understatement. Mr Sunak, in a speech on April 19th, characterised this Tory obsession with driving the economically inactive back to work as his moral mission. To try to characterise the latest Tory clampdown on welfare benefits as a matter of morality is quite something, and the language used by the UK government was remarkable. The UK government press release, highlighting Mr Sunak's supposed moral mission, declared that the consultation that it had launched on benefits comes as many more working age people are being awarded PIP, personal independence payment, for mental health conditions than when it was first introduced over a decade ago. It referred to concerns that the assessment process is significantly easier to game by individuals who seek to exploit the system, which seemed like an incredibly over-the-top statement. The latest onslaught on benefits from the Tories signals Mr Sunak and his government actually continue to believe forcing the economic inactive back to work is a solution to the UK labour market woes. The press release observed there are more than 450,000 people who have been unemployed for 6 months and well over 250,000 who have been unemployed for 12 months. The country is in the grip of a skills and labour shortages crisis which has been exacerbated enormously by Brexit. However, given the Tories have been wielding the stick of benefit cuts at the economically inactive for so long now, to such little effect, you would have thought they might have gathered this is no kind of solution at all to the labour market woes. Crucially, from a societal perspective, it is high time they realise many people have a very good reason for being economically inactive. Secretary of State for Health and Social Care Victoria Atkins said, "We are seeking the advice of those who understand the system best so we can break down these unnecessary barriers to work. Through tailored care and reasonable adjustments, we can build a healthier workforce for a healthier economy." The Conservatives are in fantasy land on this front, and the reality of the situation is clear. The Tories fueled the skills and labour shortages crisis greatly with their hard Brexit and the ending of free movement of people between the UK and the European Economic Area. Rejoining the single market and regaining this advantage would be a simple way to alleviate the UK's labour and skills shortages and boost the economy's growth potential. Sadly, the Conservatives will not do this, and there is no sign that Labour will either. Talking of being oblivious to economic realities, Lord Frost really outdid himself in his testimony about Brexit to the House of Commons Business and Trade Committee last week. Committee Chairman Liam Byrne kicked off the questions last Tuesday by asking Lord Frost, "Are you pleased with the way trade has progressed since Brexit?" Lord Frost replied, "Yes, I think is his short answer, because I think all those who predicted a dramatic change in our trade and a dramatic turn for the worse have been proved wrong." This response was entirely predictable, but it was lamentable nonetheless. Lord Frost went on to dispute the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility's estimate of the economic damage from Brexit, and he flagged the change of administration in the US as a reason for the Conservatives failing to meet their target of having 80% of the country's trade covered by free trade agreements post-Brexit. On this lack of a US trade deal, Mr. Byrne posed the question, if President Trump is re-elected in the United States, does that change the dynamics and the possibilities? Lord Frost replied, I think it does. What I have heard from the US Republicans at least is that we shouldn't assume President Trump's general scepticism about free trade would necessarily be an insuperable obstacle to a UK-US deal, but of course I can't speak for them. The fact remains, however, that even a comprehensive US trade deal would deliver very small benefits relative to the damage from the loss of frictionless trade with the EEA. What the latest outpourings from Mr. Sunak and Lord Frost make clear is this is a government that is hidebound by the ideology. It is difficult not to form the impression that cold economic realities for UK businesses and households and living standards are far less of a priority for Lord Frost and Mr. Sunak. And that article was written by Ian McConnell, Group Business Editor. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 29th of April, from the news section. Extensive study of beavers reveals environmental impact. Article by Gabriel Mackay. A new study suggests the reintroduction of beavers to Scotland could boost biodiversity. The semi-aquatic rodents were hunted to extinction around 400 years ago, but have been brought back in select areas starting with Argyll in 2009. Scotland's Beaver Strategy 2022 to 2045 sets out the benefits and challenges of reintroduction, including environmental and economic opportunities and the need for management where necessary. A new study by the University of Stirling has looked at how beavers reintroduced to Scotland indirectly interact with deer and the implications for the woodlands they share. Researchers found that almost 2/3 of trees felled by beavers produced new shoots which were more abundant and concentrated closer to the ground than on other trees. This could diversify woodland structure into a mix of short and tall tree stems, which ought to boost biodiversity, according to researchers in the Faculty of Natural Sciences. The research, which also involved researchers at Newsquest and the James Hutton Institute, was carried out in eastern Scotland in established beaver territories by studying almost 800 trees. Dr. Kelsey Wilson, who led the new study as part of her PhD research at the University of Stirling, said, beavers have gradually returned, sometimes after long absences, into riverside or riparian woodlands often shared with large populations of browsing deer. Beavers use their sharp teeth to cut down riverside trees in different sizes and species. Their most favoured trees, such as willows, usually respond by vigorously sprouting a crown of new shoots, similar to what happens with traditional tree coppicing. We found that almost 2/3 of trees produced new shoots after being felled by beavers. These shoots were more abundant, nutritious and concentrated closer to the ground than on other trees, making them an easily accessible food source for foraging deer. As beaver populations rise, interactions with deer are expected to become more common in riparian woodlands, which are valued for their role in reducing pollution to rivers, shading them from rising temperatures, buffering flood impacts, and as a source of food for aquatic life. Having a deeper understanding of beaver-deer interactions can help direct conservation efforts and habitat management strategies to meet national woodland creation goals in the areas where these two species overlap. The University of Stirling's Professor Nigel Welby, a co-author of the study, said, the way in which a woodland is structured greatly affects its biodiversity and conservation value. Our research shows that tree felling by beavers could diversify woodland structure into a mix of short and tall tree stems, which ought to boost biodiversity overall. However, if more deer are attracted into riparian woodlands by the offer of a rich, accessible food source that beavers stimulate through their felling behaviour, it could suppress tree growth. This might simplify woodland structure, and future woodland regeneration efforts could be hindered. This research, which also involved Professor Alison Hester, senior scientist at the Hutton, was jointly funded by the University of Stirling, Newsquest and the Hutton as part of a 4-year PhD project, 2018 to 2023. Dr. Martin Gaywood, Newsquest Species Projects Manager, said, We were pleased to help support this research exploring the complex role of beavers within the Scottish environment. Scotland's beaver strategy has ambitions for wider beaver restoration across Scotland, and so the potential interactions between beavers and deer will be an important consideration in planning, decision making and management. Where beavers have been restored to new catchments, then ongoing monitoring of combined herbivore impacts in relevant woodlands has been carried out. Riverside woodland creation and management in the presence of beavers is a key focus of the work of the Scottish Beaver Advisory Group, and this research makes a further useful contribution to our knowledge base. An article was written by Gabriel Mackay. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 29th of April, from the Politics section. Humza Yousaf resignation speech in full as SNP leader quits. By journalist Gabriel Mackay. Humza Yousaf said, "It was the greatest privilege of my life to have led this country," as he announced his resignation as First Minister at Bute House. Facing two confidence votes, one on his premiership and one on his government, the SNP leader stood down after it became clear he had no path to success. Here's what he had to say in full. Last week, I stood here to announce the ending of the cooperation agreement between the SNP and the Greens, the Bute House Agreement, and that the SNP would seek to govern as a minority government. I made that decision as leader of the SNP because I believed ending the Bute House Agreement was the right one for the party I lead, and I still do believe that to be the case. But, most importantly, I believe it was the right decision for the country. My hope was to continue working with the Greens in a less formal arrangement as the SNP moved into a new phase of minority government. Unfortunately, in ending the Bute House Agreement in the manner that I did, I clearly underestimated the hurt and upset that caused for Green colleagues. For a government, let alone a minority government, trust in working with the opposition is clearly fundamental. While a route through this week's vote of no confidence was possible, I am not willing to trade my values and principles or do deals with whomever simply for retaining power. After spending the weekend reflecting on what's best for my party and the country I lead, I've concluded that repairing a relationship across the divide can only be done with someone else at the helm. I have therefore informed the SNP's National Secretary of my intention to stand down as party leader and ask that she commences a leadership contest for my replacement as soon as possible. In order to ensure a smooth and orderly transition, it is my intention to continue as First Minister until my successor has been elected, particularly as Parliament will be debating some incredibly important legislation in the coming days and the coming weeks. I cannot tell you what an honour it is being the First Minister of the country I love, the country I'm raising my family in, and the only country I'll ever call home. As a young boy born and raised in Scotland, I could never have dreamt that one day I would have the privilege of leading my country. People who looked like me were not elected to positions of political influence, let alone leading governments, when I was younger. But now we live in a UK that has a British Hindu Prime Minister, a Muslim Mayor of London, a Black Welsh First Minister and, for a little while longer, a Scots Asian First Minister of this country. So for those who decry that multiculturalism has failed across the UK, I would suggest that the evidence is quite to the contrary, and that is something we should all celebrate. I've had the honour of serving in government for almost 12 years in a variety of roles. Whatever position I've held during my time in politics, I've always been guided by my values. As First Minister, I am incredibly proud to have a fair tax system, the most progressive in the UK, where those who earn the most contribute the most. And it will always be my core belief that, in a country as rich as ours, wealth must be far more evenly distributed. I've no doubt at all that whoever takes over from me will be just as committed to reduce child poverty. I'm proud that, through our actions, an estimated 100,000 children are expected to be lifted out of poverty this year. I also hope that, as a country, we can be really proud of the strides that we have made to tackle inequality, prejudice and discrimination. But let's also acknowledge that, far too often in our country, hatred continues to rear its ugly head. In a world where every issue seems to descend into a toxic culture war, it's often the most marginalised in our society who bear the brunt. As politicians of all political parties, We are afforded and are privileged to have a platform, and all of us must resist the temptation of populism at the expense of minorities, particularly in a general election year. I've often said that, as a minority myself, my rights don't exist in a vacuum, and are only protected because the rights of everyone are protected. From the backbenches of the Scottish Parliament, I will continue to champion the voices and rights of those who are not often heard, be that at home or indeed overseas, such as those who are suffering and continue to suffer the most catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza as the world watches on. Let me say to my SNP family, I will always be with you. I will always campaign alongside you. We have had setbacks in our movement, but we have overcome them, and we will do so again. Independence feels frustratingly close, and, believe me, no one feels that frustration more than the leader of the SNP. But the last 2 miles of the marathon are always the hardest. We have run this marathon as a team, and I will now prepare to pass the baton on to a successor whom I'm absolutely certain will lead us over the finishing line. And I will tell you today what I will say to that successor. First Ministers get to meet countless inspirational people in communities across Scotland, working to improve the lives of people around them. First Ministers get to see firsthand many of the exciting businesses and industries that will power Scotland's future. And whenever First Ministers set foot beyond Scotland's shores, no matter where they go in Europe or across the world, they encounter friends and admirers of our nation. If only every person in Scotland could be afforded the opportunity to be First Minister for just one day. On the very next day, it's my belief they would vote for independence with both their head and their heart. To my fellow MSPs of all political persuasions, next week is a crucial milestone. We mark 25 years of devolution. We have an electoral system which is designed for no political party to have an absolute majority. Devolution's mothers and fathers, rightly in their wisdom, believed that no one loses out by politicians sharing wisdom, sharing counsel, sharing ideas. The reverse is also true, and that is why I would make an appeal to colleagues from across the political spectrum that, while government must of course act in good faith, so must their opposition, and be prepared to collaborate with us rather than just oppose for opposition's sake. The only people who suffer as a result of such an impasse are the very people we seek to serve. Politics and politicians, not unreasonably, I'm afraid, have often been maligned. However, I believe that when we get it right, and we often do, we are a force for good that can transform people's lives for the better. To my colleagues in opposition, regardless of political party, I genuinely do wish you well. I bear no ill will and certainly no grudge against anyone. Politics can be a brutal business. It takes its toll on your physical and mental health. Your family suffer alongside you. I am in absolute debt to my wonderful wife, my beautiful children and my wider family for putting up with me over the years. I'm afraid you'll be seeing a lot more of me. You are truly everything to me, although, of course, as you can tell, I'm sad that my time as First Minister is ending. I'm so grateful and so blessed for having the opportunity that this has afforded to so few to lead my country. And who could ask for a better country to lead than Scotland? Thank you very much. And that was Humza Yousaf's resignation speech in full, as reported by journalist Gabriel Mackay and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 28th of April, from the news section. Probe after man dies in targeted attack in Port Glasgow. Article by reporter Craig Williams. Police are treating the death of a man in Port Glasgow as suspicious. Around 9:05 p.m. on Saturday, police were called to a report that a man had been found seriously injured on Brookfield Road. Emergency services attended, but the 27-year-old was pronounced dead at the scene. An extensive investigation is underway to establish the full circumstances of what happened, police said. Detective Chief Inspector Ali Semple, Major Investigation Teams, West, said, "At this time, we believe that the attack on the man was targeted. Officers have been carrying out inquiries in the area, checking CCTV and speaking to local residents, but we'd still like to hear from anyone with information who has not yet come forward. We'd be keen to view any doorbell/private CCTV or dashcam footage from the area and between 8:30pm and 9:15pm on Saturday, just in case footage has been caught that would identify any suspects. There will be an increased police presence in the area as our inquiries continue. Police Scotland can be contacted via 101, quoting reference number 3680 of Saturday the 27th of April 2024. Alternatively, please call Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111, where you can give your information anonymously. And that article was by Craig Williams. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 29th of April, from the Arts and Entertainment section. Edinburgh-born author Chris J. Sansom dies aged 71. Article written by Josh Carmichael. Author Christopher John Sansom, best known for creating the character of Matthew Shardlake, has died at the age of 71. The historical novelist, known as C.J. Sansom, died on Saturday according to publisher Pan Macmillan. The character of Shardlake, a Tudor lawyer, was introduced in his first novel, Dissolution, which was published 21 years ago. He released 6 further novels featuring Shardlake, as well as 2 standalone historical novels, Winter in Madrid and Dominion. His works have just been adapted into the series Shardlake, which features the Innocent star Arthur Hughes as the main character, and Game of Thrones actor Sean Bean as Thomas Cromwell. The first season of the Tudor murder mystery series is set to be released by Disney Plus on Wednesday. His literary agent Anthony Topping called it an extraordinarily strange coincidence that Chris has died only a handful of days before a new generation of fans will meet Matthew Shardlake. This is also a moment for which Chris' established fans have been waiting for a long time, he added. Chris was so proud of all the work and determination that went into bringing the novels to our television screens, which I hope will bring an entirely new audience to the books, and which will maybe also inspire some old fans to return to their favourite C.J. Sansom novels. So long, Chris. I was lucky to know you. His editor and publisher, Maria Yet, said, "An intensely private person, Chris wished from the very start only to be published quietly and without fanfare. But he always took immense pleasure in the public's enthusiastic responses to his novels, and worked tirelessly on each book, never wanting to disappoint a single reader. He was working on his new Shardlake novel, Ratcliffe, when he died, but his worsening health made progress painfully slow. His meticulous historical research and his writing were always so important to him. I shall miss him hugely, not only as a wonderfully talented writer who gave joy to millions, but as a dear friend of enormous compassion and integrity." Born in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1952, Sansom studied at Birmingham University, where he achieved a BA and PhD in history. Before becoming a full-time writer, he retrained as a solicitor and practiced in Sussex. Lucy Hale, managing director of Pan Macmillan, said, "It has been our profound privilege and pleasure to be Chris's publisher from the very beginning, and Pan Macmillan will continue to celebrate him and introduce many more readers to his extraordinary body of work for many years to come. We are all thinking of his friends at this very difficult time." And that article was written by Josh Carmichael.
The Herald on the 30th of April and the news section. Carlowry Castle World First with Environmental Award by Kirsty Dorsey. A luxury exclusive use venue located just outside of Edinburgh has become the first castle in the world to be awarded B Corp certification for its commitment to environmental and social well-being. Carlowry Castle, part of the Carlowry Group, owned by Scottish entrepreneur Andrew Marshall, joins international companies such as Patagonia, TOMS, and Aesop, who have all received B Corp certification for putting people and planet before profit. In an age where businesses and consumers are seeing the importance of putting social and environmental issues above everything else, becoming B Corp certified this month after 10 years of trading is an excellent way to show our customers our lasting commitment to doing good by people and planet, Mr. Marshall said. Obtaining B Corp certification requires a comprehensive assessment of a company's entire social and environmental performance, from supply chain and import materials to charitable giving and employee benefits. All B Corp businesses are manually assessed and audited every 3 years to ensure they maintain these high standards. When our guests come to Carlowry Castle, whether that be for a business conference, a wedding, an exclusive use party, a community event, or private stay, they know that they are supporting us in our mission for an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economy, Mr. Marshall added. The castle is said to have a long history of promoting social and environmental well-being, and in the 19th century was home to one of Scotland's most remarkable botanists and explorers, Isabel Wiley Hutchinson. Miss Hutchinson was the first woman to receive the Mungo Park Medal, a member of the Scottish Geographical Society, and a published writer in National Geographic. Under the ownership of Carlowry Group, the castle operates its own charity which provides meals and supports to people experiencing homelessness. It also hosts free community events such as picnic and praise and carols at Carlowry. On the environmental side, electric vehicle charging points are available for guests and staff use, while extensive tree planting has been deployed to regenerate unused land. Chris Turner, Executive Director of B-Lab UK, said welcoming Carlowry Castle to the B Corp community is hugely exciting. Its commitment to doing business differently will be an inspiration to others and will help spread the notion that success in business is as much about people and planet as it is profit. And that was by Kirsty Dorsey. The Herald on 30th of April and the news section. Dundee Contemporary Arts shortlisted for Museum of the Year by Caroline Wilson. An art gallery collective is celebrating being named a finalist in the UK Museum of the Year award as it marks its 25th anniversary year. Dundee Contemporary Arts, DCA, is among 5 galleries shortlisted for the Art Fund Prize, which has previously been won by Glasgow's Borough Collection. DCA is one of Scotland's foremost contemporary art organisations, incorporating 2 galleries, a 2-screen cinema, print studio and award-winning learning programme. It is competing against the National Portrait Gallery and Young V&A in London, Craven Museum in Skipton in North Yorkshire and Manchester Museum. DCA was opened by the Scottish Secretary Donald Dewar in March 1999 and is located in the city's so-called cultural quarter. Director Beth Bates said, "Even if I wasn't director, I would still love DCA. There's really nowhere else like it. The quality of all 4 programme areas, exhibitions, cinema, print studio and learning is incredible, with some of Scotland and the world's best art and films supported and shown, as well as being a brilliant resource for artists and communities living closely. It's a really popular social space, and I love how much audiences love DCA as well." In September, the director issued a grim warning that it faced a £300,000 funding black hole. She told MSPs in Holyrood it may have to draw on the last of its reserves to fill the financial gap and keep its doors open. The 2024 award has a particular focus on community engagement, sustainable ways of working, and demonstration of ambition by reinventing what it means to be the best museum for the audiences of today and tomorrow. The winning museum will be announced at a ceremony at the National Gallery in London on July 10 and will receive £120,000, with £15,000 awarded to each of the 4 other finalists. The 2024 judging panel, chaired by Art Fund Director Jenny Waldman, includes BBC Radio 1 presenter Vic Hope, Tanya Kovacs, artist, and Sir John Layton, former Director General, National Galleries of Scotland. The judges will visit each of the finalists to inform their decision-making, while each museum will make the most of being shortlisted over the summer through events and activities for new and current visitors. Jenny Waldman, Director of the Art Fund, said the shortlisted museums for this year's Art Fund Museum of the Year prize are shining examples of the impact museums are making locally and nationally. Each of our finalists truly has something for everyone, and all have community at the very heart of their programming. Their commitment to innovative partnerships while operating within an extremely challenging funding environment is incredible. And that was by Caroline Wilson. The Herald on the 30th of April and the news section. SNP Leadership Contest nominations open until 6 May by Jodie Harrison. Nominations are open in the SNP Leadership Contest as senior figures have backed former Deputy First Minister John Swinney for the top job. Meanwhile, a small number of the party's parliamentarians have given their backing to former Finance Secretary Kate Forbes, who has not yet indicated if she will run. First Minister Humza Yousaf announced on Monday he will stand down as he faced 2 confidence votes in Holyrood, but said he would stay on to allow a successor to be chosen. Candidates have a week to declare their intention to run. The SNP's National Secretary announced nominations opened on Monday at 11:59pm and would close next Monday, 6 May. In the hours following the First Minister's announcement, senior members of the party turned to Mr Swinney to offer stability. Speaking to journalists in London, the former Deputy First Minister said he was actively considering putting himself forward. Pete Wishart, the long-serving SNP MP, has already described Mr Swinney as being the runaway favourite to take over the leadership of the party. Posting on X, formerly known as Twitter, Mr Wishart said, "John Swinney would be an excellent unifier for our country and our party. We should all get behind him if he chooses to run." Meanwhile, Scottish Education Secretary Jenny Gilruth, who has been suggested as a possible successor to Mr Yousaf, said, "John Swinney is the best choice to be Scotland's First Minister and at the SNP leader. I will be strongly supporting him if, as I hope, he chooses to run." Reports also suggest Health Secretary Neil Gray, a key ally of Mr Yousaf and someone considered a potential leader, was backing Mr Swinney. Whoever wins the contest will need to be able to win enough votes in Holyrood to be elected First Minister, with the SNP needing just 2 votes for an overall majority. The most likely suitors for the SNP would be the Greens, given the pro-independence bent of both parties and the reticence of other parties with the required number of MSPs to work with the party. The Greens announced last week they would not support the First Minister in a confidence vote in his leadership this week after he scrapped the Butte House agreement, eventually leading to his decision to step down. So far, MSPs Annabelle and Fergus Ewing have said they would like to see Ms Forbes have another tilt at the leadership, which MP Joanna Cherry has also said she supports her. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar said his party would press ahead with a motion of no confidence in the Scottish Government, saying he did not think the SNP is capable of a stable, competent government. On the BBC Good Morning Scotland radio programme, it was put to him that his motion would fall given the Scottish Greens will not back it. He said it's, of course, for other political parties to decide how they vote in that motion, but I think the principle still applies in our motion, and that's why we're pushing ahead. Asked who he feared more between Ms Forbes and Mr Swinney, he continued, "To be honest, I'll take either of them, because I think both of them are leading a broken, dysfunctional party. I think John in particular can't pretend to be some kind of change candidate. He has been at the heart, in his own words, not just of this SNP government for the last 17 years, but at the heart of the SNP machine over the last 40 years. The SNP's former Westminster leader, Ian Blackford, also spoke to Good Morning Scotland, saying it was obvious that the SNP could not have done a deal with Alex Salmond. He continued, "He will not be in the room with us. Of course, he's not an MSP. He said Mr Yousaf is a man of great dignity, great leadership, adding John has got political experience, I think, someone that can work across Parliament. He was heavily involved in the Butte House agreement, and I think someone that can build consensus." And that was by Jodie Harrison. The Herald on the 30th of April and the Arts and Ends section. Dean Castle Music Festival lineup is a high note for Kilmarnock from the East Ayrshire Leisure. The scenic surroundings of Dean Castle will soon host a hotbed of Scottish talent in a forthcoming festival that's a must for all music lovers. He recently performed in front of 60,000 people before the Six Nations Scotland v France rugby game, and now there's a chance to hear Voice UK semi-finalist Jeremy Leviff in the stunning surroundings of Dean Castle at Kilmarnock. Based in Ayrshire, Levif is a French pop rock singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist. He was highly praised by judges Tom Jones, Anne-Marie and Ollie Murs, where he reached the semi-finals of Voice UK in 2021 on Team Will I Am. Tom Jones says his tone was really lovely, while Murs said he looked forward every time to Levif's performances. Your voice is so beautiful and pure, I just think you're incredible, said Anne-Marie. Levif went on to the finals of The Voice France in 2023 on Team Vianney. His first two albums, Come Hail or Storm 2017 and C'est la Vie 2021, were produced by Scottish producer Sam Gallagher and have been well received in the UK, France and internationally, with many of the songs played on local radios across Europe. In 2021, his single Puzzle reached the 50,000 streams on Spotify across more than 100 countries and was included in the Pop Rock Shop Spotify official playlist alongside other bands such as Coldplay and Imagine Dragons, as well as the Good Vibes Volume 2 playlist from music influencer Alex Rainbird Music. Always in demand, Levif has played over 100 shows in Scotland, opened for Scottish Celtic rock band Scarivore, worked with Danny O'Donoghue from The Script, and played with his musical hero Jeremy Cullen as part of a 5G live event organised by EE and the Music for All charity in 2019. This year, he was invited to perform in front of 60,000 people at Edinburgh's Murrayfield Stadium before the Six Nations rugby game, Scotland versus France. Recently, he sold out the Gaeta Theatre in Ayr as part of the Ayrshire Lads show alongside BGT winner Jay McDowell, the McDonald Brothers, X Factor and Blair Gilmer, the Voice Kids. Also appearing at the festival is Ben Walker, whose first burst into music scene in 2021 and has since featured alongside artists such as Kyle Falconer, Ryan Downey, Nathan Evans and Callum Bowie, gracing the stage at Glasgow's renowned King Tut's and St Luke's venues and selling out his debut headline show along the way. He supported indie icons The View on their Scottish tour in December last year. He's come a long way since playing on live streams during lockdown and has cultivated an avid fan base who follow him wherever he goes and are sure to turn out at Dean Castle on May 18. Revving up the crowd will be Kilmarnock-based The Rampants, a four-piece indie rock band who have quickly risen in popularity around the Glasgow clubs due to their innovative blend of their Scottish accents and early 2000s indie rock. This has even spilled over into some rap being involved from time to time. The lineup consists of Jamie, a high-energy frontman-songwriter, James, a stellar guitarist who never gets flustered, Ewan, a self-taught drummer who always keeps a cool head, and Ben, a smooth bassman who carries the spine of the band's back catalogue. Songs released by the band include Can You Ramp It Up, The Way It Goes, and most recently, Belated. More homegrown talent comes in the shape of Ayrshire-based country rock band The Railwaymen, who are well known throughout Scotland for their live sets, which feature original material with a rock and Americana vibe. Their motto is, if you can't remember any of our tunes, then we've failed. Five-piece band have headlined twice at King Tut's and played notable gigs such as the Darwin Music Festival Butefest and the Edinburgh Festival with the BBC. And hailing from Fife, Cammy Barnes, who has had great success with multiple singles charting in the UK Top 20 and number one entries on the singer-songwriter and country alt iTunes charts, will also play the event. He will join singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist Nathan Harkins, who also enjoys a strong local following in Ayrshire, and Kerrymuir singer-songwriter Katie Nichol, for what is sure to be a memorable day and evening at Dean Castle Courtyard, Kilmarnock, on May 18 from 2pm to 10pm. Ticket prices are £23. It will be followed by next day by a food and drink celebration showcasing Ayrshire's finest producers, presented by Ayrshire Food and That in conjunction with East Ayrshire Leisure. And that was by the East Ayrshire Leisure. The Herald on the 30th of April and the Arts and Ents section. Time and Line of Duty actor Brian McCarty dies aged 59, by Josh Carmichael. Glasgow actor Brian James McCarty has passed away at the age of 59, family has announced. Brian was described as a wonderful and passionate actor by his wife Sarah, who announced the news on social media on Tuesday morning. The Bellshill-born man carved out a successful career in TV and film during his years as an actor. He was often known for portraying bone-chilling and terrifying characters, with standout performances as Jackson Jones in BBC prison drama Time and as Gilman in the 2013 adaptation of Irvine Welsh's Filth. He played roles in 5 episodes of Irvine Welsh's Crime, 3 episodes of BBC police drama Line of Duty, and featured in the 1995 film Rob Roy as Alistair. Brian was also due to star in the upcoming Outlander series spin-off, Outlander Blood of My Blood, as Isaac, the leader of Clan Grant. According to his family, Brian passed away suddenly at home on Sunday, 28 April. McCarty's wife Sarah said it is with great sadness that we announce the passing of Brian James McCarty, beloved son, brother, uncle, and dear friend to so many. Brian passed away suddenly at home on Sunday, 28 April. A wonderful and passionate actor on the stage and screen, Brian loved his work and touched many lives and is gone much too soon. We love him and will miss him greatly. Please remember Brian in your thoughts. Funeral arrangements will be announced in the days ahead. As a family, we would ask for privacy at this time. And that was by Josh Carmichael.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Tune Review and tell your friends about our service.